Hey everybody, welcome to the Entrepreneur Experiment podcast with me, Gary Fox. This week we've something a little bit special for you. The idea for this episode was sparked by me becoming an ambassador for Champion Changemakers. And what that is that it's a weekend at the end of September, 23rd to the 25th, where you can come along and you can work with mentors like me for a whole weekend if you have an idea for a social enterprise. You don't even have to have an idea. If you want to just start something and be a part of something, you can come along. There's 6 hubs all over Ireland and you have a chance for competing for a bursary of €10,000 for your idea. To get involved, just Google Champion Changemakers. Now, on to today's guest. This is one of the best social entrepreneurs in the world, and it's one of our first guests based outside of Ireland. Jamie's based in London. His idea is Too Good To Go. It's a social enterprise making profit, which is the best kind. Essentially what it is that at the end of the day, retailers have loads of extra food left over, and to combat food waste, Jamie set up Too Good To Go. The idea is simple. It surprises and delights. I signed up yesterday. I'm getting my first bag today. And what that is that you sign up, you pick your retailer of where you want to go. They have a bag left over at the end of the day. It only costs €5 and you can literally get anything. Here's my chat with Jamie Crummie, the founder of Too Good To Go. Jamie, welcome to the pod.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
Brilliant. It's an absolute pleasure to chat to you. I mean, your Too Good To Go is just popping up everywhere right now.
I mean, that's what we're trying to do. We're I'm glad you've recognized us or seen us somewhere. But yeah, I mean, it's been a journey, but for sure, like we're just trying to reach as many people, as many businesses as possible to get people to start thinking about food waste differently.
It's very timely. I was actually chatting to someone about this yesterday and they were like, oh, that's such a good idea, especially now. And I was like, oh, what do you mean? And they're like, oh, the cost of living crisis. And I was like, hadn't even drawn those 2 lines. I was like, I was just kind of in love with it. It's such a good idea. Maybe just give people a broad overview of what the idea is.
Yeah, it'd be my pleasure. I mean, I guess before diving into that, a little interlude into it is, like, I love the idea, right? I think it's the best thing ever. And people often come and say to me, like, how is this like not been done before? And it is quite funny when you think about it like that, because what we try to do is make fighting food waste something which is really simple and something which is super accessible, but it's also fun. So the premise of Too Good To Go works, and it's an app-based platform, right? So we're a social impact company, which is all about fighting food waste, and we do this through technology. We do this through our app. So you log on to the Too Good To Go platform, and you'll see a whole load of businesses which are fighting food waste with us. So we essentially connect individuals with businesses who have surplus food for sale. So if you're thinking everything from a Cafe Nero to a spa, it's all of that food which would otherwise have gone to waste. So individuals pay a reduced price. They get a surprise bag of food, all of items which would otherwise have been thrown away. So you pay around, it could be like €5 you're paying, and you're getting €15 worth of food, but you don't necessarily know what food you're going to get. But again, that's all part of the fun, right? That's all part of the experience. And so we've been going now for about close to 7 years, and we just launched in Ireland coming up to a year ago.
The surprise element. Talk to me about that, because that's the bit I love. And actually someone sent me a TikTok, like I think a week or 2 ago, of like this lady is like, oh, I've got another Too Good To Go bag, and it was from a butcher's here in Ireland, right? James Whelan Butchers. And she goes, oh, let's see what's in the new bag. And like I was like, oh. There's like, you're leaning forward waiting to see, and she does the unwrapping and she's like, oh my God, it's a whole chicken and there's like mince. And I was like, €5, that's unreal. But it was the surprise element got me. Is that designed in? Did you bake that in for surprise and delight? Or is that like one of those accidental genius moments?
Oh, it's totally intentional, right?
And you came up with it.
Oh yeah, but no, I love it. It's blowing up on social media. These unveiling of the surprise bags. It really makes for spectacular viewing. I mean, we've had people come to us before and started quoting Forrest Gump to me. Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know which one you're going to get, and it's similar, I guess, to an extent with a Too Good To Go surprise bag. But that whole surprise element, I talk about how we've wanted Too Good To Go to be something which is simple, something which is accessible, but ultimately something which is fun. And, when we talk about this notion of simplicity, Too Good To Go is incredibly simple and intuitive to get, right? It's you pay a reduced price and you get a load of food. You don't know what it's going to be, but it's all food which was destined for the bin. And, it's incredibly accessible as well because of the nature of our platform. We connect individuals directly with businesses. So, we don't have, any delivery. We don't have, we never handle the food ourselves, which means we're able to scale our operations and meet and reach businesses, every corner of Ireland, for example, whether it's in Dublin City or whether it's in a remote part of Kilkenny. We really can be anywhere and everywhere. So within that, as well as we use apps, we use an app and we use phones. So really in that sort of way of thinking, the solutions, in our pocket, we all have a phone. So we're then able to, make fighting food waste something which is incredibly accessible. But it's also about keeping it fun. And when we talk about food waste, we mentioned the cost of living crisis briefly. When we think about what we're trying to do, food waste is one of the leading contributors to climate change. 10% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions come from throwing food in the bin. When we think about climate change, we often talk about, the doom and gloom of it all. It becomes something which, invokes, climate emergent, climate anxiety and things like this. And so we're able to, give people a tool in which they're proactively able to do something. And it's fun. What is more fun than getting this surprise bag of food and unveiling it? And there's a chicken that comes out. There might be some sausages. Fingers crossed. There's a fillet steak down there.
Well, I have something to tell you. I have my first ever Too Good To Go bag ordered today, and I'm picking it up at 2:00. So I'll send you a message and let you know what I got.
Brilliant. I want to have that selfie cam as well, seeing the unveiling of it all.
I'll do a little unveiling and I'll tag you on Insta later. You've summed it up beautifully there. There's so many serious things in the world right now. Okay, we're facing so many things. You can't listen to the news without just been this state of crisis. And it's almost overwhelming. It just washes over and you're like, oh, how does this? And people want to do right. Inherently, we all want to do the right thing. But I think what you've done is you've pared it back, and you've tapped into people's social psychology of wanting to do right. But also, people have to live, people have to get on with their lives, and they want to make they're feeling a direct impact. How did you hit on this idea? Because there's so many things that just make sense. The no delivery, the surprise element, the working with small retailers. How did you talk to me about the early genesis of this idea? Because obviously 7 years in, I'm sure it's tweaked and pivoted and you're like, oh, didn't see that coming. But that's great. Talk to me about the early genesis of the idea.
It'd be my pleasure. I mean, when we think about how we've started and how Too Good To Go has evolved, I mean, we first started off as a website, and it was something which, wasn't particularly effective. I'll be honest there. It wasn't particularly scalable, but it was something in where we were able to, just start testing this idea and start getting our hands dirty. And when I talk about how the website itself wasn't something which was scalable, I mean, it was it was so unintuitive that every time somebody went onto the website, and they would rescue a surprise bag, we'd have to log into the back end and change the availability from 5 to 4, or 4 to 3, 3 to 2, etc., etc. So it wasn't built to scale, and I guess that kind of gives you an idea as to how little traction we were having earlier on that we were able to keep on top of this. So it was. I guess what I mean by this is it was something where we were just relatively fearless, I suppose, in trying to test out, this concept, trying to test out this notion, and really just speaking with business owners around what would work for them. And the idea the concept has evolved. We started off and we predominantly targeted buffet restaurants. And it was buffets that, we could see that there was such an undeniable amount of food which would be thrown away. You'd hope that food that's been set out for several hours, wouldn't be used the next day for health and safety reasons or whatever. And most of the time, that was, all of that food left out in a buffet, it would be thrown away if it wasn't eaten by that evening. So it was very undeniable. But all I can say is, thank goodness we did. We pivoted just from buffets, because I think we would have hit a ceiling, relatively early on with the amount of buffets around Europe. But that's where we started. And then we've expanded since then from a website which wasn't built to scale, to then developing an app, to then not just working with buffet restaurants, but expanding to bakeries, expanding to cafes, and even now to supermarkets, to retailers, and to food producers and manufacturers as well.
Talk to me about something you said there, because I think that's really, really important. It wasn't scalable. People have this fear of getting it right first time. Oh, no, I can't start now. Or, oh, I need $200,000 of funding. Or, oh, I have to build an app. Talk to me about just getting going, because that little bit of friction at the start seems to be the number one thing that stops aspiring entrepreneurs from getting off the mark. How did you just get going?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think, when we look back, we were fearless, right? We had nothing really to lose. I was 23, 24 years of age. I didn't have any, huge responsibilities in life. I didn't have a mortgage, I wasn't married, I didn't have children. And so in that sense, I think, it was quite a fortunate time for me in my life in which, there was no other external responsibilities. So I was able to be selfishly fearless or courageous, or however we want to term it. But it was very much about just getting going. We wanted to start testing things. And I think you talk about something there, Gary, which is we always strive for perfection, right? But we need to start somewhere. And so ideas evolve, concepts develop, products improve, but it's all about getting your skin in the game, right? And that's what we started out. We started with this website. And the reason why we started with a website is because, we were somewhat risk averse, that we didn't want to start building an app with very little money between ourselves, because apps, they're not cheap to make, let's just say. And so we started with this website, but we saw that there was traction. We saw that there was an appetite, from businesses. There was an appetite from individuals, from consumers, to actually start rescuing food that would otherwise have gone to waste. And paying a reduced price to get a container of food and fill it up with food left over from a buffet. And so for us, it was very much about, as I say, getting our skin in the game, testing something out. And that in itself grows your own confidence. I think back to, when we won our first, big target, partner that we wanted to work with. And it was this buffet chain in the UK. And they had maybe, I think, 12, 15 something sites across the UK. They weren't huge, but they weren't small, and they had huge buffets. We're talking about, I think it was 50 plus dishes, something like that. It was insane. It was massive. And this was a business that we really wanted to work with. And anyway, when we started working with them, they said yes to us. We even have an app developed. They said yes to us, and the deck that we presented to them, it was something that we would cringe at right now if we were to look back at it. We didn't have any sort of professional processes and things like that. It was very much just getting going and testing things out. But what we were was incredibly passionate. We had a clear vision as to what we wanted to do. And we had a clear problem in which we were trying to solve. And so, these people, this buffet chain, came on board, and that for us gave us huge amounts of confidence. I'll never forget that feeling of elation. I was ecstatic when they said yes and they came on board. It was this huge buzz. It was fantastic, and that there was, I think, one of those moments when I really had that just the vision again, just like coming to fruition in my mind that this is going to work and this can work. And so I think the advice to people is start small, get your skin in the game, but start testing. And then as you start seeing those small wins, at the time they're huge wins, right? But it's all about gaining that momentum, about gaining that confidence to keep going forward.
I love that. You have to do the reps, right? You don't know what you don't know, right? You're like, oh, I have this theory. Theories are absolutely fine, but like you'll get involved and you'll be like, oh wow, that's not even what I thought it was close to being. Talk to me about how it works then, right? I'm a restaurant, you come to me. How does it work for me? Do I make money? Do you make money?
Sure.
Where does the money pass through?
So we talk about Too Good To Go being like the triple win. It's a situation in which we hope, we feel, and that everybody wins in this. So the way in which Too Good To Go works, I mentioned earlier, we connect individuals with businesses who have surplus food. So whether that's a spa, they have lots of food left over come the end of the day. You purchase a surprise bag and then you collect it yourself from that business during an allotted collection window, typically sort of the last 30, 60 minutes. Now, in terms of the whole model works, as I say, it's this triple win. A win for the individual. You as a consumer, you're able to get amazing food, like great quality food, but also at a reduced price, at prices that, that don't cost the earth. But you're also doing something positive, right? You're also doing something positive for the environment, positive for the planet, because you're helping to reduce food waste. And then, it's a win for the business themselves, because the business is able to recover sunk costs. So from we take a fee from what the customer pays, and the lion's share then goes on to the business themselves. So they're able to recover those costs of throwing that food away.
Gotcha.
What they're also able to do is to get new people through the door. Customers that maybe didn't know that this cafe, this bakery, this greengrocers, this butchers existed. And then they were also, as I say, able to upsell other items. If you're going in to get your surprise bag from Cafe Nero, let's say, or Starbucks, you might go and buy a coffee at the same time. And then finally, it's a win for the planet. None of this food is going to waste. So, businesses can feel good, consumers can feel good. And that's what's really exciting about this. So for us as a social impact company, what we've effectively done is really change the way in which people perceive business, I feel. For us, the more meals that we save, the more successful we are as an organization, but also the better impact, the greater impact we've created for the environment as well. So our success and our environmental impact are directly correlated, which again, I think is such an exciting thing to be a part of.
It's such a fascinating model. Like, this is one of those easy interviews. I just have so many questions. So you've got a marketplace model, which is notoriously can be challenging to fill, because you're trying to fill both sides, right? You're trying to fill suppliers, and you're trying to fill customers on this side. So you're trying to raise awareness on both sides, and it's kind of like the seesaw juggling act. Talk to me about how you got started, because that seems to be an issue for early stage marketplaces. It's either they have loads of customers and not enough suppliers, or loads of suppliers and not enough customers. So how did you do that?
I mean, when we first started, we didn't have any of that. But we very much, we were a bootstrapped organization when for the first sort of 12, 18 months, probably a bit longer actually, while we got started. And we very much followed the mantra that we would have to build our supply first, and then that demand case would follow. And so it was a situation where we started quite small. We launched in the UK in a city called Leeds in the north of England, and we started there. And it was just about getting as many businesses as possible to join us on this journey. Now, it wasn't any easy feat. As I say, when we first started, we didn't have a fully functioning app. We had a website. We then transitioned over to an app relatively early on. But it was a case, as I say, of getting as many businesses as engaged as possible.
Was this hand-to-hand combat? Were you literally going door to door to door to door? Are we doing media, or how are we getting the awareness out there?
So for businesses, it was literally on the streets, foot soldiers knocking on doors and drumming up interest. That's how we did it. We would, we didn't really have a social life, to be honest with you. I mean, even if we were going to the pub, on the way to the pub, we would pass a food business or whatever it might be. We'd go in, we'd speak to them. On the way coming home, you may be on the bus, the train, whatever it might be, you'd be speaking to the person beside you, telling them about Too Good To Go and how to fight food waste with us. But it was, as I say, very much in those early days, we were out in the streets, speaking with businesses for 13, 14 hours a day, drumming up that interest and getting them engaged in Too Good To Go, signing them up onto the platform. And then once we had what we felt was a good enough number, we then launched the app itself in Leeds. And that's how it all started. And then in terms of how we got that demand going for the first while, it was, we were out there guerrilla marketing. We'd be on the street. If we weren't speaking to a food business, we were handing out a flyer. We were speaking to people on the train, on the bus, wherever we were, stayed at the bus stop, be handing out flyers, putting stickers on people, just very much, a guerrilla type way of marketing. We didn't really have the budgets at all for doing any digital advertising and things like that. But what we've always been able to utilize is press. What we have is a unique product. We have a unique story. We're doing something which is great for the environment, which is great for communities, which helps businesses. And so it was, let me sort of think back now, it was around August 2016. And, we'd been in operation now for a good few months. It was like August, September 2016, I think, where we first got our big media splash. And what we'd done is we'd got in touch with a freelance journalist from, it was like Vice magazine, and she was based over in Manchester. And I say freelance. The reason I say that is because she wanted us to cover her expenses, so her train ticket. And we were there like, it's going to be like, what? I think it was 30, 40 euros, something like that.
Leeds to Manchester, was it?
Leeds to Manchester to Leeds, and then back again. We're like, oh God, can we stomach this? Okay, we're going to have to. I mean, that's how bootstrapped we were, right?
But I love this. These are the real stories, right? Because I love stories like this, because generally people with hindsight or with kind of rose-tinted vision look back and go, yeah, it was all this big strategy. We launched our PR and it was all planned to a T. I love this. Thank you for being so transparent, because these are the actual real stories. So you decided, right, we'll raid the kitty. No pints tonight. We're going to pay for a ticket. We're going to pay for a ticket over.
But this was what it was. We were just desperate for people to see Too Good To Go in action, because once you do it, it's just fun and it makes so much sense, and it's fantastic. So anyway, she comes over on the train. We don't meet her. She just goes around, and we gave her some vouchers to use Too Good To Go. So she goes to a handful of different places and wrote this article, and it was brilliant. Like, the thing just blew up.
You never met her?
Never met her.
Was that on purpose, or was that like?
I think for her it probably was. You don't want to. She wanted to just try Too Good To Go.
Yeah.
I think we gave her a few comments, but we didn't actually meet. So we probably owe a lot to this journalist, actually, because wrote
Note
this
to
article.
self: send her a LinkedIn message after this article.
um, and this article just blew up. I
Wow,
think it got shared like thousands of times, and as a result, this media storm just ensued, and
amazing.
it sort of culminated with us going on BBC's The One Show,
Oh wow.
and that was like amazing. I mean, we got like introduced by John Bon Jovi himself, so
No
we were
way.
literally living on a prayer.
Wait.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah, that was one of the ways then in which we were able to start growing our demand base by really tapping into the media.
Explain this to me though, because a lot of people don't really get this. You've said two brilliant things there, which I want to touch on. First is the guerrilla marketing piece. I'll come back to that in a second. But talk to me about this media storm, because I think people don't understand this. They think, oh, I've got to get a big PR campaign. I've got to get a big team behind me. Blah 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 blah. Talk to me about the knock-on effect of, because I've seen this happen firsthand. The knock-on effect
Sure.
of getting one media piece and then the subsequent trail that comes behind it.
So again, in these early days, we were just starting out. You talk about big strategies and things. We had a vision of how we wanted of what we wanted to achieve, and we had a plan on how we were going to get about that. Within all of this, you had to be able to be, flexible, adaptable, and agile, because things change. But we didn't have a PR team. We didn't have an agency which was going out and selling our story. We were proactively just reaching out to journalists here and there, and then off the back of this article going viral, we had so many inbound requests of people wanting to do things with us. And as I say, it was because we have a great story. It's something which is incredibly unique. A business model which is geared around creating social and environmental impact. But as a result of all of this media, our brand awareness was just improving exponentially. We had, after the One Show, I think we had, was it 30-odd thousand people in the hour after that had aired download our app,
Oh my
which was
Lord.
huge. So we were going from 1, 2, 3 people downloading the Too Good To Go app on a daily basis to then, because of all of this PR, we were having thousands of people downloading it on a daily basis. I mean, for a short period of time, but we had thousands of people downloading it. But that in itself came with its own challenges, right? So as I mentioned, we'd launched in Leeds first, and then we then brought Too Good To Go to Brighton in the south of England, which is, for anyone that doesn't know, it's like a very it's a very green city. And then we were on the One Show, and we then just had to like try and make Too Good To Go as national as possible. So then we started trying to get businesses on board in London, and people hearing about us in the media started getting in contact with us over email saying, oh, how do I sign my business up? So that then worked fantastically. So we had, again, through using PR, we had people downloading the app, so that demand side. But we also had businesses, because every consumer, or every business, I should say, is also a consumer. So we had businesses contacting us saying, oh, I saw your article here, or I saw this internet blog here, or I watched you on the One Show, whatever it may have been. And so we then started having businesses contact us there. And this is what I talk about, this PR engine, this machine, which helps us to grow our demand, but it also indirectly helps us to grow our supply as well. But what I mean is this came with its challenges, right? So when we were on the One Show, we weren't a national organization at all. We were in a handful of cities, and barely that. We had maybe 150, 200 tops businesses working with us. And so as a result, people were, downloading the Too Good To Go app in, I don't know, a village up in the north of England, or a city in the southeast, wherever it may have been. But they'd log on, and there'd be no businesses near them. And so we get negative reviews on the App Store, or negative reviews on the Play Store.
I was going to ask you this because as you were talking, I was like, how did they handle that explosion? Because, oh, look, first world problems, right? Oh, no, I have too much demand. But it is a problem. I was texting a mate of mine this morning. He was just saying, oh, the product's going really well in the States now, which is brilliant. He goes, but now we have to figure out how to make that production happen. How did you tackle that problem? Because it still is a problem, right?
I mean, it was a huge challenge, right? Because as an entrepreneur, you're often, geared to say yes to everything. And so we had all of these press opportunities coming through. Some of them weren't even relevant to us. I ended up being on Brazilian national news it must have been sort of autumn, winter 2016. I was on US national television. I was on Turkish national television,
That's
Australian
amazing.
national television. It was insane. Like, this story had gone hyper global. But as a result, you're kind of distracted away from that primary focus. And it was about getting more businesses on board on the Too Good To Go app. But you say the challenge there, yes, it was a fantastic, problem to have. We had all of this press coming in, but it was also hard because, once we then went into a city and people had already downloaded Too Good To Go because they'd heard of it through this PR storm that had happened, it's a lot harder to win people back around.
Yeah.
And so that was a challenge in itself. But look, if we hadn't had this PR storm, who knows where we would have ended up. So it's so important, as I say, to be able to respond to the cards in front of you.
Is that a messaging piece then? Is that just making it so abundantly clear on your website and how you engage with people? Look, we're here, but soon we're going to be here, here, and here. How did you tackle that?
So a lot of the things we did as well was just adapting the app. So if people opened it and it was in an area where we weren't currently active, for them to empower them almost and say, are there businesses in your area which you would love to see on the app? Tag us on social media, send them an email, and that sort of way. So trying to build this community within our Too Good To Go users who could help us expand into different areas.
So your customers almost become advocates then. You said something there about, it was just so many opportunities coming your way. Talk to me about this in a broader context, because when I'm chatting to other entrepreneurs, there's often this feeling of, I don't know where I should be spending my time. I'm just getting pulled in all these different directions. How have you learned to manage that and kind of adjust to go, right, these are the key things?
So as you grow and as you develop, those focus areas will change. For the first few years for us, it was laser focused on just trying to get as many businesses as possible to join the platform, because we knew that when we put food on the app, people would rescue it. We just had this organic, this organic demand, which was fantastic. And so that then becomes the focus. So I think, the lesson here is learning to respond to what those business demands are and focus on those. When I look back in hindsight, was it really beneficial, me being on Turkish national television? Probably not. But again, you also do things which keep you motivated and keep you inspired, and those things are fantastic because you really feel that you're part of something bigger, that you're managing to inspire other people in different countries. And we started Too Good To Go because we fundamentally disagree with the amount of food that we're throwing away. We started Too Good To Go because we want to change people's attitudes, change people's perceptions around food and food waste, getting people to give a shit about food. And so yes, it may not have been the smartest business decision to be spending so much time on Australian TV or whatever it might have been, but actually for me it was something which it kept me super motivated. It kept me really inspired because I knew I was, I was reaching people in different markets and different countries around the topic of food waste itself.
I want to go back to something you said about guerrilla marketing in the early stages, because you're as digital as it gets, right? You are a digital platform, but yet you did guerrilla marketing at the very start. And this is something that is so completely overlooked because everyone's obsessed with Instagram ads, Facebook ads, TikTok, Twitter, have to be digital. Yes, that is important. But the guerrilla marketing to get that first bit of traction is fundamental. Talk to me about kind of like tips and tricks you'd give people to go, right, you've a big plan, but start right here.
Well, I mean, when I look back at the guerrilla marketing we did, it was as low budget as it can get. I mean, we printed out flyers and things like that, and we were just hitting the streets, getting people, like physically asking people to get out their phone and download the Ticket to Go app. That says, I think there was another time we were out, we even got a busker to write a song about Ticket to Go and fighting food waste, which I think there's a video somewhere still of this poor busker just listening to me and my co-founder just like singing a song about Ticket to Go and fighting food waste. But look, it was, for us, we did that as a means to an end. It was necessary for us because we just didn't have that budget right then to be creating digital ads, nor did we really have the expertise at that stage either. And so what we really wanted to be able to do is just to start getting that traction, start building that momentum. Would we do things differently now? Again, it goes back to around area of focus. Like, where do you see the most value that you can bring using your time? Because again, there's only X amount of time during the day. So where we ended up getting to was in a position where we would be going, we would be out, going door to door, business to business, trying to speak to business owners to get them on board the app. And while we were walking from business to business, we would be handing out flyers, speaking to customers as a way to maximize our time. So I think that for us was where guerrilla marketing was a useful tactic, because it became a somewhat efficient time to use our time in transit from meeting to meeting.
I love that. And going from 0 to 1. I think that's the key thing, right? Just get from 0 to 1. There's a number of your features of your app.
But I think as well, Gray, so just to build on that as well, in those early days, it was as much about keeping yourself like motivated and inspired. So when you would see, we could see, in the preceding day, how many people had downloaded the app. We could see in real time how many people were rescuing a meal. And so actually, when you went out and you'd spoken to a few people and you saw, again, these early days, 10 people had downloaded the app, you were like, well, that's fantastic. Those are 10 people I spoke to today. And, that was very much the way in which we tried to, just keep building that momentum. Of course, as you get going, as your networks, develop, as you get more involved and embedded within the ecosystems in which you operate, there are far more scalable ways in which to reach people. But again, it's about starting somewhere and testing things. And I've always been a firm believer of this test and learn approach. Try something once. If it doesn't work, can you tweak it a bit? But at least you've tried, and then you can move on to something else. That's
the whole genesis of this podcast. That's where the name comes from, the entrepreneur experiment, because I believe at their heart, most businesses are experiments. They're like, did that work? And all the great entrepreneurs I meet are going, yeah, I tried this thing, didn't work. Tried this thing, didn't work. Tried this thing, kind of worked. And then I kind of tweaked it a little and then tried it again. I heard a great podcast this morning. The entrepreneur made a great point. He's like, there's two kind of errors. There's errors from inaction and there's errors from action. If you're making errors because you're in action, totally fine. You're going in the right direction. If you're making errors because you're inactive, you're dead in the water.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of truth behind that, and it's goes back to what I said earlier. It's all about getting that skin in the game. Trying things out, getting your hands dirty, and then seeing what works and being able to respond to all of that effectively.
The psychology part of your app is fascinating. I want to kind of dig into this a little bit because it's so well done and well thought out. So I want to kind of get your thoughts on this. The surprise element. I know we talked
Yes.
about this a little bit early. How did that come about? Because I think that is just so fundamentally fascinating. Because normally people are like, give them all the information. People hate surprise. People hate change. There's all these social psychology norms that we think are correct when in fact
Sure.
they're often not.
So the surprise element, it didn't actually come just from thinking about the consumer themselves, but rather thinking about the vendor, the food business. And the way in which we built our technology is just by keeping things simple. Keeping things simple has been at the heart of like what we've been trying to do. And I guess this is another piece of advice to any entrepreneur listening, is we often try and overcomplicate things time and time again, right? And you mentioned earlier about the notion of like wanting to perfect things before going live. So how can we cut away all of that bullshit and keep things just as simple as possible? To start testing things, to start trying things. And in essence, that's how the whole surprise element came about. And it was how could we keep it simple for our partners, for the food businesses themselves, operationally sound, that anyone working in the supermarket, that anyone working in the cafe, the coffee shop, the butcher, the greengrocer, whatever, can just grasp this concept. So it was just whatever food is left over, it goes into the Too Good To Go bag. And so as a business, you weren't having to, itemize every single thing that was left over, because that takes time, which costs money, and there's also fears around that. If you're selling things at 70% off their regular value, and you're saying it is going to be that chicken from the butchers, well, somebody could really just challenge and say, well, wouldn't the customer just wait and get that chicken at a certain time? So it was, the surprise element was started very much around just keeping it simple, and specifically keeping it simple for our businesses and for our partners. And because of this, because they weren't having to itemize anything, it meant that our platform itself was really simple to use. You would just say, I've got one bag, and we wouldn't have to do anything super challenging or complex in the background. So again, it sort of just it all sort of goes back to this notion of trying to keep things simple.
There's a great phrase: genius doesn't come from adding things; it comes from taking things away. But it's so hard to do. It's such a fine art. Like you what you said there is completely correct. Keeping it simple is the best business strategy in the world. But it's so difficult, especially as you grow, because what you do when you pull out and go, there's so many moving parts here. So many, if you consumer, the retailer, the app in the middle, blah, 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 blah. There's about a million steps. But you've boiled it right down. Does this come from experience, or where did this initial, keep it as simple as possible? Because that seems like such obvious advice, but it is the most ignored thing in business.
And well, I think when we look back at how we were keeping it simple and why we were keeping it simple, was again listening to what the market was saying. If we had something which was different for a platform which was different for different types of business, that overcomplicates things, and again that makes things harder to scale. So for us and our model, it is all about economies of scale. So we need to reach as many people, as many businesses for our model to work, but we also need to reach as many people and as many businesses if we're going to have the impact that we want. We are a mission-driven organization, and creating impact has always been at the heart of what we wanted to do. So within that, it was so important for us to have a model, a platform, which was flexible and adaptable, to a buffet with 50 plus different things, to to a giant supermarket which has turnover of billions of pounds a year. So it was ensuring that this flexibility and adaptability was intrinsic with how our operation worked. At the same time, however, having something which is simple, having something which is flexible, has had its own challenges. I couldn't tell you the amount of times I've spoken to a business owner who said, "Yeah, well, what's the catch? This can't be too simple. No, this is too simple." And it's like, no, it's simple because we're transparent. We've kept something which is easy to implement, easy to understand. But again, even that has its own challenges itself.
I love that. That's definitely the old school mentality. What's the catch though? Because for you to win, I have to lose, right? That old school. That's going away, thank God.
Exactly, but that has been a way in which I think we've experienced business in the past. That somebody has to lose for somebody to win, and actually what we're saying is, no, like, let's look at this whole thing differently. Let's have models. Let's have systems. Let's have operations in which society and the planet wins, in which businesses and individuals win. And for us, we're a registered B Corp, and this has been something which has been fantastic for us because it's codifying that we align people. And when I say people, I mean people that work at Too Good To Go, as well as the communities in which we operate in. But it's alongside people, the planet, and profit, so that you have to have a purpose, and making sure that these things coexist and they do align.
And you can have profit. It's not a bad word. It's not like, oh God, no, they have to be a social enterprise. They can't make any money, and people use that as a stick to beat some social enterprises with, which I think is insane.
Precisely. I think we live in the parameters of society in which we are, and if we're able to use business as a vehicle for change, then let's do it. Like, how much better would the world be if we all operated, or all businesses had a social and environmental purpose, or at least ensure that they align their profits alongside having positive impacts within the communities in which they operated in.
There's an abundance of greenwashing happening now. There's an abundance of like, quick, tick that box there. Someone, can you? We need a press release on something green. So it's the new model are companies like you, companies who right the way through, start to finish, fully transparent, fully open, where you're kind of going, okay, they're not just ticking the box. The simplicity, I just love the simplicity element. But what's been the biggest challenge? Because you're flying now, you're 6-7 years at it. It's a really, really, really successful business. What's been the biggest challenge you faced, or challenges? Because I'm sure there's been a lot.
I mean, there's been huge amounts of challenges for us. We often we talk about the success stories, or we talk about the simplicity components and everything like that. But for sure, there's been a multitude of challenges. For us, some of the challenges that we've had is making sure that Too Good To Go itself is able to work all across the supply chain. So what I mean by that is transitioning just from buffets at the beginning to then having a model which effectively works with retailers and supermarkets. That's had its challenges. We look back over the past sort of 2+ years. One of the the big challenges we had, well, everybody had, was a pandemic. And really sad was the amount of businesses that ended up having to close down because they couldn't survive the pandemic itself. So that's that's been a whole challenge. During the pandemic, food waste didn't stop, right? It just went further down the supply chain. Yet the majority of our partners had to turn off Too Good To Go for that first sort of wave. and that's because hospitality businesses weren't open, and then retailers, they had such high absentee rates that they just didn't have the staff to be able to do Too Good To Go as well as stock their shelves as well as serve their customers. So it was just about core operations. So for us there, the challenge was, well, food waste is still happening, but we need to find a way in which we can get our users to access it. So that's when we then started working with manufacturers and food producers, because that food was still being produced. It was just being wasted like further down the supply chain itself. So we've had so many different challenges, but for us it's then just being around how we can respond to that.
What do you think? What trends, you've touched on it there, and I kind of want to touch into that a little bit more. You've touched on it there. What trends are you seeing emerging in business? Because you guys are pretty much frontline. You're seeing these demand, pull, push. What kind of trends are you seeing emerging post-pandemic?
I think the most exciting thing for me, which I have seen, I would just say post-pandemic, but I think within the last few years, even going back maybe to 2019, is how sustainability practices are becoming more core within operations of businesses. Now, what I mean by that is consumers themselves are demanding that sustainability and environmentalism is something that they care about and that we need to respond to. We are in the midst of a climate crisis, of a climate emergency, and particularly some big businesses are recognizing the duty that they play within that. So we're proactively, making moves to create an impact, whether that be implementing something like Too Good To Go, whether that be, introducing new processes and things like this to ensure that they have more robust, resilient, but importantly, environmental supply chains. Is something which I think really, really does excite me. What I've also noticed as well is how much more community businesses are growing. I think a big fear of mine is how the high street could close down. I think that becomes a pillar of communities themselves. And one thing I do fear is the future proofing of these high streets, which have become like the bedrocks of communities.
What's happening on the high street now that you see? Because I even just walked through Dublin this morning, and it's still hit and miss, right? There's still some kind of shutters down. There's still some kind of things where you're like, that's still not open. What are you seeing firsthand?
Yeah, just a frightening amount of businesses on high streets closing. Now, not always within the food sector. I think the food sector is something which can be quite resilient, but particularly in other industries, whether that be retail. And I think that's something which is quite sad, right? Because it is these shops which make up the fabric of our communities. And when we see these store closures, when we see a movement towards a total online, it's incredibly sad that these institutions within communities around parts of Europe are closing.
Yeah, there has to be a balance, I think, because you touched on it there. Without that community, there's no town centre, there's no village centre, and there's loneliness creeping in too for people who maybe the cafe or the pub was there. Maybe they live alone. So it's important to find that balance. I think it will correct itself. I think there'll be a rinsing out of the businesses who maybe were very unprofitable and probably mismanaged, to people who are like, okay, we're going to make this work, but we're going to, like you said earlier, we're going to make it work with a positive impact, but to make a profit as well.
But I think, I was having this conversation this morning, and it was around, the cost of living crisis, the energy crisis. How many small businesses, how many businesses are going to be able to survive with uncapped energy costs?
Yes.
Because for residents, for residential use, energy will be capped, but for commercial use, it won't. And so there will be, cafes, there will be, shops which can't afford to stay open 12 hours a day because they don't have that constant traffic or that constant footfall. And so, that becomes something, I think, which is not necessarily a trend, but it's something to look out for, and it's something to be mindful of.
A friend of mine made a very interesting point. I was talking to him. He's a kind of a high-end boxing gym. You do classes. And I was like, oh, how's things going? He goes, oh, I'm really seeing this trend cementing itself now. Mondays and Fridays are absolutely dead. Dead.
Right.
City centre. He's right bang here in the city centre of Dublin. And he's like, dead. He goes, so what I've done is I've kind of shifted classes to kind of Tuesday morning, Tuesday evening, Thursday morning, Thursday evening. And I was like, well, at least that's great. You're flexible. But as I was thinking it through, I was like, well, cafes can't do that. Pubs can't do that. Restaurants can't do that. They have to be open from 7 to 7, Monday and Friday. They can't. So that inflexibility is going to be a real challenge for businesses, I feel.
But it'll also be for this boxing gym. They're still having to pay their lease, right? 7 days a week. And it just means that it's only being used, 3-4 days a week, which is the other challenge. So maybe we'll see certain properties being used in more of a hybrid sort of format. I can't really picture a gym being a cafe on a Monday morning and a gym on a Tuesday, but there may be having to be some of this more hybrid way of thinking.
I like that idea. Talk to me about the future of Too Good To Go. What is the plan? Because you are expanding rapidly. Give me the grand vision for the next 6 to 12 months.
So for us, we're in 17 markets now globally.
Wow.
So that's 15 markets in Europe and then Canada and the US. So for us, it will just be solidifying our position here and really growing Too Good To Go in the places in which we operate in. And that means working with more supermarkets. That means working with more, bakeries, greengrocers, butchers, etc. And really just growing that knowledge around food waste itself. On top of that, for us, it's making sure that we can really be in control of our own destiny. So being a successful business, but a sustainable business, and I talk about sustainable in that true sense of the word. An organization which is environmentally focused, but as well is a healthy business. So we are able to be very much in control in that next stage of our own growth without having to rely on external factors and external players.
I like that. I have a saying that I said to young entrepreneurs, and they're like, oh, I want to make a dent in the world, Gary. I'm like, save yourself, then save the world. It's like when you're putting on the oxygen mask on the plane, they say that for a reason. Put it on yourself first, because if you're not sustainable, if you're not able to survive the next 6 months, you're no good to anybody. I have 2 final questions for you. The final one, which I'll get to in a second, is to recommend a book that's had an impact on you. The second last one is advice. So there's a great initiative here in Ireland called Champion Changemakers, and it's coming up now at the end of September 23rd and 25th. People can come together over those 2 days for a social impact business, come together, create a business over the weekend. It's cool. I'm an ambassador. We're doing it here in Dublin. We're doing it all over Ireland. It's a really, really cool initiative. So stuff like that is really good for early stage entrepreneurs. Even if you don't have an idea, you come along. But what advice would you have for entrepreneurs like that in 2022? Because the world has changed a lot. What advice would you have for young entrepreneurs who are like, yeah, I want to start, but... So what would you say?
Want to start, but... And I think, for that, it really hinges on what success looks like for you. I think the main important thing with any of anything to do with starting a business or starting your own journey, whatever it is to do something that makes you happy. And I spoke about how I was very fortunate to be in a situation when I started Too Good To Go where I had very little pressures. If you are someone who does have those pressures, well, is there a way that you can dip your toe in that gives you that happiness, that gives you that peace of mind? So whether it's doing something 3 days a week or 2 days a week or a couple evenings a week, but the idea here is to get your skin in the game and start doing something, but do it in a way which makes you happy, because it won't be an enjoyable journey if you quit your job, you have a mortgage, you have kids, all of this type of things, and a lot of other pressures if you don't have a model which is ready to go to market. So I think it's doing something within the parameters which is going to make you happy. And once you start getting those small wins, you're growing that confidence, that passion will really be there.
I love that advice because it's so logical to, you don't have to burn the boats, that myth of like, oh, burn the boats, go all in. You have to feel that unbelievable pressure. You don't, because you're going to feel pressure anyway. So you need to do it in a very controlled way. Jamie, has there been a book that's made an impact on you personally or professionally?
Yes. There's a book by Robert Trussell, The Ragged Trouser Philanthropist. And it is, it's a book which is, it's set in an artificial town in the UK. And it basically, for me, it outlines everything that a leader shouldn't be. And it highlights the inequalities in which we have in society. And that has been a book which has fundamentally shaped the way in which I think about society, the way I think about business, and really the way I sort of view politics as well. So I hugely recommend The Ragged Trouser Philanthropist.
I love that. Brand new recommendation. We get so many recommendations on, and that's the first time that has been recommended. And it's always good to read around your subject, right? Even if you're not in impact businesses or you're not in a social enterprise, it's so good to read and understand around your business. Jamie, where can people learn more about yourself and Too Good To Go?
Yeah, so I think first off, download the Too Good To Go app. It's available on App Store and Play Store. You can head to our social channels, so that's Too Good To Go _IE, or head to our website, which is www.toogoodtogo.ie as well.
And I will be doing an unveiling. I'll be doing an unbagging this evening of my chicken, and who knows what else.
I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Jamie, it's been an absolute pleasure. I wish you every single success in the world, because this is one of the coolest stories I've heard in a long time.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you like this type of content, we produce this every single week, 3 episodes per week. Click here to subscribe to the channel and click here to watch last week's episode. I'll see you back here next week for a brand new episode.